Third in the league in scoring.
So that was the scene that happened at the conclusion of the first half. Now, many fans online did notice this. One being White Gold. White Gold stated this on Twitter during the game. He stated, bro, why is Briann January shadowing Caitlin Clark? She's not even playing. Just because she's having a convo with the refs about Lexi Bucket. Jesus Christ. Somebody else said, P.O. January, watch on Caitlin. You will be sitting again on some Trump. So this is last year. Now, I do want to let y'all know Briann January is the same coach that stepped on Caitlin Clark's ankle and messed up her ankle. The reason why she could not finish the season last year. And then we got just a week ago, Sophie Cunningham saying this. Sophie Cunningham saying this on her podcast.
We are not going to win very many games when people score 100 points on us. And they average, I think, around 80 points, and we let them score like 111. Our defense.
First, let's establish who Briann January actually is, because her credentials matter enormously to understanding why this dynamic is so complicated. January spent the better part of a decade playing professional basketball at an elite level. She is a WNBA champion, having been a key contributor to the Indiana Fever's 2012 title run. She was named to the WNBA All-Defensive Team an extraordinary 7 times across her career, making her one of the most accomplished perimeter defenders the league has ever produced. When she finished her playing days, she brought that defensive expertise into coaching, spending time as an assistant at Arizona State, and then joining Stephanie White's staff with the Connecticut Sun, before following White to Indianapolis ahead of the 2025 WNBA season. Now here is where it gets interesting. When Caitlin Clark herself was asked about January during the preseason, she was direct about the dynamic. Clark acknowledged that January pushes her hard on the defensive end of the floor. She said January does a really good job of emphasizing defense and that it starts there. For Clark, who built her reputation on her offensive brilliance, the dazzling deep threes, the no-look passes, the ability to take over a game, being held accountable on defense by one of the greatest perimeter defenders in league history, is a genuine adjustment. And publicly, at least, Clark has indicated she understands why that accountability exists. But here is the thing. The WNBA fan base, particularly the massive, passionate wave of supporters that followed Clark from her college days at Iowa all the way into the professional game, is watching every single sideline interaction under a microscope. And when cameras caught what looked like a heated exchange between Clark and January during a May 2026 game against the Seattle Storm, an exchange where Clark appeared to have an animated conversation with January on the bench, before moving to sit elsewhere, social media erupted almost instantly. Now, to be completely fair, multiple reporters who covered that game noted that what was caught on camera was consistent with the kind of intense, competitive conversations that happen between players and coaches dozens of times across a long season. Animated sideline discussions are not unusual. They happen in the NBA, the NFL, college basketball, in every competitive sport at the highest level. The presence of a spirited exchange does not automatically mean there is a toxic relationship or a power struggle. That important context got almost entirely swallowed up by the wave of speculation that followed online. That said, you cannot just dismiss what fans are reacting to here, because there is a real underlying question worth examining. The Indiana Fever brought in an entirely new coaching staff under Stephanie White with one primary goal: build a winning culture around Caitlin Clark and compete for a championship. Briann January is a core part of that staff, specifically tasked with improving a defense that was genuinely problematic during Clark's rookie year in 2024. The Fever's defensive numbers in that 2024 season were among the worst in the league, and that was a legitimate issue that needed to be addressed. January's job, in the simplest terms, is to make this team harder to score against. And doing that means holding every single player on the roster, including the franchise cornerstone, to a higher standard defensively. That accountability is not sabotage. That is coaching. But when you are talking about a player as uniquely gifted offensively as Caitlin Clark, and when the optics of those coaching interactions get filtered through the intense emotional investment of millions of fans, things can get complicated very quickly. Here is the question that actually matters. Is the tension that fans are picking up on just the natural, productive friction of a demanding coach pushing a superstar player to be better? Or is there something more uncomfortable underneath the surface? A disconnect between a coaching staff's defensive vision and the kind of unrestricted freedom that Clark's game arguably needs to reach its absolute ceiling. Because if you look at what Clark is capable of when everything clicks, the numbers are genuinely staggering. Her rookie season shattered records across multiple categories. She set new standards for rookie assists, for triple-double pace, for the overall impact a first-year player can have on a franchise's bottom line. Arena attendance, television ratings, merchandise sales, every single metric tied to the Fever's business exploded the moment Clark arrived. She did all of that while playing for a team that finished below .500 and ranked near the bottom of the league defensively. The central debate that has gripped the fan base is this: does the path to a championship run through a defense-first system that asks Clark to work harder on her own half of the court? Or does maximizing Clark mean building the entire system around her offensive firepower and accepting a slightly higher defensive cost? It is a legitimate basketball argument, and reasonable people can disagree about the answer. What is less debatable is the extraordinary pressure that this situation places on the Indiana Fever organization as a whole. You have one of the most marketable athletes in the history of women's sports. You have a coaching staff with genuine credentials and a real defensive philosophy. And you have a fan base that is watching the relationship between them with an intensity that borders on obsessive. Every sideline moment gets dissected. Every substitution gets questioned. Every animated conversation gets interpreted through whatever lens the viewer already holds going in. The franchise's responsibility in all of this is to create an environment where Clark can develop into the complete player she has the potential to become, while simultaneously protecting the trust and harmony inside that locker room. That balance is not easy to strike. And right now, based on what we are seeing play out publicly, it is not clear that the Fever have fully struck it. What is clear is that the 2026 season is going to be enormously revealing. Can January's defensive system actually transform the Fever into a legitimate contender, while keeping Clark engaged and thriving? Can Clark embrace the defensive demands being placed on her, without those demands limiting the offensive brilliance that made her a phenomenon in the first place? And can this organization navigate the unprecedented level of external scrutiny that comes with being the home franchise of the most-watched player in the game today? Those are the real questions, and the answers are going to shape not just this season, but the long-term trajectory of the entire Indiana Fever franchise. At WNBA Updates, we are going to be tracking every single development of this story as it continues to unfold. Because whatever you believe about the Caitlin Clark and Briann January dynamic, whether you think it is healthy competitive friction or something more concerning, the stakes involved could not possibly be higher for everyone in that organization. Drop your honest take in the comments right now. Do you think January's defensive accountability is exactly what Clark needs to reach the next level? Or do you think the Fever need to rethink how they are managing their franchise player? This debate is clearly not over, and your voice matters in this conversation. If you are not already part of the WNBA Updates community, now is the time. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next breakdown. We are covering everything. Every game, every controversy, every story that matters in women's basketball, right here on WNBA Updates. We will see you in the next one.